Thank you, Ms. Manning. Mr. Good, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Secretary Sue, from your official Twitter account 29 days ago on April 2, you tweeted or X'd, if your boss says everyone at work is like family, you might need a union. Do you think it's a negative thing to treat people like family at work?
No, I do not.
So you would say
Congressman.
that treating people like family at work is a good thing or a positive thing, or you think that's a negative thing?
I think that treating people with dignity, with respect.
I want to ask do you think that treating people like family at work is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think that.
I'd like you to say it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think all working people should be treated with dignity and respect, and that the laws that protect them should be complied with.
So you would say treating them like family does not accomplish that?
No, I think
but your response was, if your boss says that, let me quote again, if your boss says everyone at work is like family, you might need a union. Why would that be?
I think that all working people deserve a just day's pay for a hard day's work.
So if you're treating them, and if you have a workplace culture that's like family, I don't know if you ever visited small businesses or not, if you've ever been around a small business where they have longtime employees, they have a family-like atmosphere, they like it there, they want to work there, they've worked there a long time, they're building retirement for themselves and so forth, and they say, hey, this is like a family atmosphere here. You would say that's a negative thing, they need to be rescued by a union?
I would not. I mean, my parents
Okay, so you don't agree with that tweet? You don't agree with what you said?
Well, my parents had small businesses growing up, and we, what I learned from them was that you should always treat your workers the way that you would want to be treated.
And I would suggest that treating them like family meets that threshold better than anything else. Let me ask you another.
But if I could,
I'm going to change subject. I'm going to change subject,
okay.
Please. Do you think why should not every federal employee come to work in person every day?
Well,
why should not every federal employee show up to work every day?
First, I do want to say again, because any suggestion to the contrary is both non-factual and I think highly offensive, that the
should every federal employee show up to work every day?
Have been working
should every federal employee show up to work every day?
Through incredibly difficult circumstances and without all of the resources that we need, which is why we come with this budget request.
So you proposed a recent policy change that instead of reporting 2 days a week, we're going to report 5 days a week to work instead of 2 days a week. That's what you reported. That's your new rule, supposedly, for the Department of Labor that's not even been implemented yet because they are literally protesting showing up to work. And I'll tell you, I hope you've seen the irony in this. On March 19, a group of Department of Labor employees showed up in person. See the irony there. They showed up in person to a federal building in Boston, not to work, mind you, but to protest the proposed plan to show up to work 50% of the time. So they wouldn't show up in person to work. I don't know why they didn't protest remotely, but they thought they needed to show up in person to protest having to come to work in person. Do you see the irony in that?
I mean, Congressman, I think it's not right to ridicule the hard work of federal employees.
Well, I would suggest that if they're not showing up to work, they may not be hardworking federal employees. Wouldn't you maybe agree with that?
Well, for example, many of my staff show up not to an office to work because that's not their job.
We agree on that. Many of your staff do not show up in person to work. We agree on that.
That doesn't mean they're not showing up to work. I said show up to an office.
So you're going to suggest they work better when they're not in person?
I'm saying that
I can tell you our constituents would say they're not getting adequate and effective service from most federal agencies, especially since some 80% of them don't come to work, they don't show up to work. Our constituents have to show up to work. We choose to show up to work. Our constituents expect us to do that. But you think you're not even implementing your own rule. They have to show up to work 50% of the time.
I mean, Congressman, I do not believe that your constituents would be the ones who are getting federal workers' compensation claims, which we have continued to process and have cut down the timelines for doing so. I do not believe that your constituents are the ones who are relying on the department.
This administration is trying to change the rules to make it harder to fire federal employees in anticipation of a new administration. Why would they do that? Why would they anticipate with a new administration they might need to protect federal workers from being held accountable and unperforming workers, maybe those who don't want to show up to work, by the way, that it might be easier to fire them? Why would this administration be fighting that in anticipation of a new administration?
I mean, Congressman, federal employees are civil servants. They're public servants.
I'm
Most
going to
of
submit
them
that they're
could do
not
another
serving
job
when
and
they're
get
not
paid
coming
much
to
more
work.
to do it.
They're not serving when they're not coming to work, and they're taking full advantage of 4-year-old COVID policies, I should say, and still not reporting to work every day. That's offensive to the people that they're supposed to serve. I yield back, Madam Chairman.